The waves crashed against the rocks like they had a grudge, spraying salt into the air, stinging McKenna's face as he stood there on the pier. To anybody else it might have felt peaceful, the kind of quiet morning you'd kill for after a long week. But to him, it was the wrong kind of stillness. It was the kind that presses on your chest and makes you think something is hiding just past the horizon. You know what I mean? That itch in the back of your neck that tells you the calm is just bait. Coda felt it too. His partner, a German shepherd with eyes sharp as broken glass and a nose that had saved McKenna more times than he cared to count. The dog's ears twitched, his nostrils flared, and a low growl rumbled out of him like thunder under the earth. McKenna didn't need words. The dog was saying it clear as day. Something was wrong. Then, in a flash, Coda bolted. McKenna cursed under his breath and ran after him, boots hammering against the damp sand. When that dog ran, it wasn't because of seagulls. His instincts were unshakable. Sure enough, as McKenna reached the shoreline, he spotted it. A massive steel container, half drowned in the surf, creaking against the waves like a coffin that refused to sink. Coda was barking his head off, the sound echoing across the empty beach, sharp enough to make McKenna's pulse spike. He knew it right then. This wasn't driftwood. Something was inside, radio in hand. He called for backup, his voice calm, but his body buzzing with adrenaline. Within minutes the team was there, grim faces lit by the morning light, their eyes flicking nervously toward the container. Together they forced the rusted doors open, the metal screaming in protest, and what spilled out nearly stopped McKenna's heart. 40 people crammed into the darkness, barely alive, their eyes wide with terror. Some unconscious, some clutching the last threads of strength, all of them marked by fear. It wasn't a rescue, it was an unearthing. Officer Cruz muttered, "Holy hell," and McKenna couldn't have said it better. Coda sat down, silent now, his job done, but his muscles tight like he was ready to fight again if needed. AS medics scrambled to pull the victims to safety. McKenna's gut twisted. This wasn't random. A container doesn't just drift ashore with 40 human beings stuffed inside. When his flashlight picked up a symbol scratched into the steel, a strange mark etched deep with a knife, he felt his throat tighten. Cruz crouched beside him, pale. "I've seen this before. Human trafficking ring, years back." That was the moment McKenna knew they weren't staring at an isolated crime. They were staring at the edge of a network, and the symbol was the breadcrumb left to taunt them. The deeper they dug, the uglier it got. Chemicals inside the container pointed to illegal factories, underground labor camps. And the ledger they found later in a warehouse raid, sealed plastic bags filled with names, dates, shipments, was the kind of thing you wish you could unsee. It was proof. Cold, hard, devastating proof. Cruz's hands shook as he flipped through the records. This is the smoking gun. McKenna didn't even feel victory. Because evidence like that doesn't just expose crime, it exposes betrayal. At the top of the list, staring back like a ghost, was a name he knew. A man he had once trusted. Zane Harper. The realization hit like a sucker punch. The mastermind of the whole operation wasn't some shadow in the dark. He'd been hiding in plain sight. The raid that followed was a storm. Gunfire lit up the warehouse, shadows darting between crates, the air thick with dust and shouting. McKenna ducked behind cover, reloaded, and pushed forward because backing down wasn't an option. Coda tore through the chaos like a force of nature, dragging weapons out of enemies' hands, his growls cutting through the gunfire. It felt less like a bust and more like a war, and at the center of it all was Harper, standing smug, arms crossed, like he'd been waiting for this showdown. His words were poison. "You think I'm the top? I'm just one piece. The real power, you'll never touch them." Maybe he was bluffing. Maybe not. But when Harper pulled a gun and McKenna shot it clean out of his hand, the smirk vanished. Harper was cuffed, dragged out past the flashing sirens, his empire collapsing around him. It should have felt satisfying. But McKenna couldn't shake Harper's last words. They rang in his ears like a curse. "You'll never find them." So he stood there as dawn crept across the horizon, Coda at his side, the ocean crashing against the shore again, like the world was back to normal. But nothing felt normal. Not after staring down a container full of stolen lives. Not after realizing the man he once trusted had built an empire on human suffering. And definitely not after hearing Harper hint at something even larger waiting in the shadows. Yeah, the cuffs clicked shut, the headlines would call it a win, but McKenna knew better. This was a battle, not the war, and that's where I'll leave you. Because what do you think? Was Harper bluffing? Or is there a bigger monster still pulling the strings? Was justice served when Harper was dragged away in cuffs? Or is it just the beginning of a darker truth none of us are ready to face? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because stories like this, they're not just about cops and criminals. They're about all of us deciding what justice really means. McKenna didn't sleep that night, not really. He sat in his office with the city lights flickering through the blinds, the smell of burnt coffee hanging in the air, and Coda sprawled at his feet, ears twitching every time the building creaked. Harper was in custody, sure, but McKenna couldn't shake the echo of his words. You'll never find them. It gnawed at him, the idea that Harper was just a pawn, a loud distraction to cover for something bigger lurking out there. He rubbed his eyes, the faces of those 40 survivors flashing in his mind, their hollow stares, their whispered gratitude, and the quiet question behind it all. How many more are still trapped? Cruz came in just past midnight, dropping a folder thick enough to snap the desk. Preliminaries from forensics, he said, his voice raw with exhaustion. Inside were photos, chemical samples, shipping routes. But what froze McKenna was the pattern. Containers just like the one that washed ashore had been traced across 3 states, all marked with the same scratch symbol. This wasn't a one-off. It was a system, a damn conveyor belt for human lives. We've got more warehouses, Cruz muttered, pointing to circled locations. If Harper wasn't lying, someone else is running the show. McKenna's jaw clenched. They weren't chasing shadows anymore. They were chasing a network. By morning, the team was back on the street, running leads, and Coda was restless, nose pressed to the floor of every new space they entered, like he could smell the truth just beneath the surface. The twist came from a place McKenna didn't expect, an old informant named Lenny, a jittery mechanic with too many debts and too much to lose. He showed up shaking, eyes darting over his shoulder. You think Harper's big? He's nothing. They've got someone higher, someone untouchable. A name you don't even whisper unless you're ready to vanish. He scribbled something on a napkin, shoved it across the table, and left without looking back. McKenna stared at the name. It was one he recognized, and it made his stomach turn. It wasn't just another criminal. It was someone tied to politics, money, power. Someone he'd shaken hands with once at a fundraiser, smiling for cameras while a trafficking empire churned beneath the surface. That night, standing outside another warehouse with his team crouched in the shadows, McKenna felt the weight of it pressing down. The air was thick, the moon pale, and Coda was growling low, steady, like a drumbeat of warning. McKenna signaled, the team moved, and the door swung wide. What waited inside wasn't bodies this time. It was crates stacked to the ceiling, filled with forged passports, stacks of unmarked bills, weapons. It was a war chest, evidence of an operation that reached higher than they'd feared. And just as the team spread out, a single phone left ringing on a desk cut through the silence. McKenna picked it up, hand tight on the receiver. A voice on the other end laughed softly. You're late, detective. Always 2 steps behind. That's when it hit him. Harper was never meant to be the endgame. He was bait, and they'd taken it. McKenna slammed the receiver down, fury boiling in his chest, but all he could hear was Coda's steady breathing at his side, grounding him, reminding him that the fight wasn't over. Not even close. As dawn broke again, painting the sky with bruised orange light, McKenna looked at Cruz and muttered, "We just cracked the door open. The storm's still coming." And maybe that's the part that lingers. The fight for justice isn't a clean victory. It's messy, it's ugly, and it keeps coming back. So what do you think? Was Harper truly just a pawn, or is McKenna being dragged into a game he can never win? And if the names on that list really do tie back to power and politics, how deep should the fight go before justice becomes something else entirely? I want to hear your take, because maybe the truth isn't just about what McKenna found, but about how far we'd all go if it landed on our doorstep.